With Pakistan's current energy mix, which consists of about 64% fossil fuels, 27% hydropower, and only 4% renewables, what specific strategies and policies is the government implementing to accelerate the development and adoption of renewable energy sources in order to achieve the target of 30% renewable energy capacity by 2030?
I think a one-sentence strategy is that from henceforth, no new electricity generation capacity in Pakistan will be based upon imported fuels. So more oil is out, more RLNG is out, more imported coal is out. And we are now focused on 5 domestic sources of energy: solar, wind, hydel. We are in the process of making 2 large hydel dams, Dasu and Momand Dam, which should be finished by 2028 at the latest. So they should be coming before 2030. Nuclear has now been reclassified as a renewable fuel. So the 2 energy plants in Karachi, which were initiated by Nawaz Sharif in 2014, have both come online, K2, K3, providing 2200 megawatts in total. So we also count that towards our renewable. And then of course, we have at the moment 1800 megawatts of wind from the Jhampir wind corridor, which has a capacity of 10,000 megawatts. So we can, in the coming days, our focus to increase our wind generation capacity. And finally, the solar issue is that we are having some difficulty in the past year because of our foreign exchange situation. But we expect that we are all ready to invite bids for 600 megawatts large-scale solar or some fraction thereof. And then we also want strategy is to start putting 1 to 4 megawatt solar on rural grids, because we also want to not only increase our electricity generation and renewables, but also to start providing more electricity to our rural areas. So the idea is that around rural grids, which have more area around them, people commercially start to put these small solar plants, which then sell directly to the distribution company. So that will be a big boost. And of course, our effort is that in the next 5 years, all federal government-owned buildings, and we hopefully provinces will follow it, will be solar-based. We will have so I think we are well on track to fulfill our commitment to implement 30% renewable energy by 2030. In fact, I think we will exceed that. The larger challenge is to have enough renewables to be able to bring down the cost of electricity. And I think in that, although Thar coal is not a renewable, but it is local, and legally we are not bound to stop using our domestic coal. So we can use our domestic coal to produce. So Thar coal is going to give us more energy, and we hope that again in the next 5 years we'll have some more nuclear capacity added to the system. We have negotiated quite a bit, but still have to reach a point where we can agree on it, because the ultimate goal here is to not only have a sufficiently large electricity generation, but to have economical generation, because the electricity bills for the consumers are too high. People are complaining across the country. People of Karachi are complaining. So we need to also, by these strategies, start bringing down the average cost of electricity that we charge to the consumer.
Okay, you were talking about people complaining. So the coalition government has added about a net 419 billion rupees to the power sector circular debt, and in just the first 8 months of the fiscal year. And at this point, hamari circular debt hai, that's about 2.67 trillion rupees, despite the significantly heavy electricity prices. Now, most of the electricity losses that we see are from transmission and distribution. So why aren't we privatizing distribution companies or reforming them, bringing about reformations? And
let me clarify. First of all, most of the losses are not technical. They are some part of it, but the losses that we face most heavily in 3 parts of the country: in the north of the country, in the west of the country, in the south of the country. are what are called administrative losses. English translation, theft. So that's the problem. So these are precisely the areas of the country where the overall governance is also weak. So in the middle of the country, beginning from Islamabad, Gujranwala, Faisalabad, Lahore, Multan, you have better governance, you have better recovery of bills, you have less administrative losses. So those companies are doing well, the other 5 are not doing well. So that is the reason that we keep adding to circular debt, but not enough recovery is coming. But another part of the circular debt is coming from what is a national policy called tariff equalization, which means that all consumers in the country pay the same price of electricity, equal. So by that, we heavily subsidize Karachi. The federal government this year, the coming fiscal year, will give 171 billion to the consumers of Karachi as tariff equalization. We will give 151 billion to the rest of the country as tariff equalization. We will give 75 billion to people of Azad Jammu Kashmir. We will give 25 billion to residents and consumers of former FATA, which are now part of KP. So there are certain national policies which bind us to provide these I would call them relief to the people and to ensure that they are all treated equally. So these are national policies which, if we really want to curtail circular debt, we have to rethink, one. Second, of course, there is a huge part of governance issues, recovery issues inside the distribution companies. That is a big challenge. So if we begin to deal with that governance challenge in the distribution companies in Peshawar, Quetta, Sakhar, Hyderabad, that will help. And then, of course, trying to rethink the way we subsidize the consumers on tariff equalization, that will reduce circular debt.
So it seems like you know what to do, but are you going to do it?
Well, Parliament dissolved itself on 12th of August. So we have tried, one of the things that we have done is to have start putting advanced metering infrastructure on our large users. So small industry, large industry, very large industry, tube well users or bulk users. This is to ensure that these are the places where most of our billing comes from. 40%, 35% of the billing is from these very small number of consumers, industries. So if we, and we have had some success there, if we put these advanced metering, then these bills become live and online for the consumer and for the company itself. So we begin to reduce losses there, we begin to reduce theft there, and eventually one of the major strategies for the coming government, whoever the people of Pakistan will elect, is to have a policy in which all meters across the country are advanced metering, so that we move into the 21st century like many other countries. I mean, China has nearly 800 million advanced meters, which they already, they shifted their system. So we should be able to, the next government should be able to, if they bring in, I think there would be a significant decrease in circular debt and major increase in recoveries from these distribution companies.
You just said that the Assembly dissolves on 12th of August. Is this an election year?
Yes, this is. I fully expect and hope that even if the Prime Minister chooses to dissolve the Assembly a day or two before, but the maximum we can go up to is 10th of November. I think people of Pakistan should be fully expectant of voting in their new government on or before 10th of November.
I was just listening to you while you were talking to Nadia just now, and you mentioned that a great injustice was done to Nawaz Sharif. Now that injustice includes his disqualification, him being banned from media, the party members being harassed, being jailed. And amid all this, PMLN was very vocal about it. Okay, this should not be done and this is against democratic principles. Now the same thing is happening to the PTI chairman and his party under your government. Isn't that against the democratic principles, or has PMLN shifted away from its slogan of vote ko izzat do?
I would differ quite vehemently, because PMLN leader and his followers never burnt a leaf, let alone Radio Pakistan Peshawar, model of Chaghi, Jinnah House in Lahore, 150 animals in Peshawar, police vehicles. Yes, we have criticized, we have suffered a great deal of injustice. But our struggle, if you will note, under PDM did 6 major gatherings across the country, beginning from my city Gujranwala, and they went to Quetta and Karachi and Multan and Peshawar. Not a single incident of burning anything, not a single incident of damaging public or private property. This is democratic struggle. The fascist means of burning, of damaging, of attacking will attract the law. So I would submit very respectfully to those who believe in democratic freedoms that those who have burnt, those who have attacked, those who have damaged, let them face the law. Do not put a cloak of democratic dissent over them, because that would be a travesty of justice equal to the travesty of justice faced by Nawaz Sharif when he was disqualified unjustly. He was removed from the head of being his party unjustly, and of course not being allowed to participate in politics of any kind. So travesties galore in Pakistan, but we should at least be capable of not putting everything on a moral equivalence that, if this leader was treated like this, that leader should not have been treated like that. The question is, what did that leader do? One leader, Nawaz Sharif, never burnt anything. Here is one leader who burnt most of the country in 2 days.
Okay, just one last question, just as a follow-up. I was also listening, and you mentioned that, state institutions and army installments were burnt. And there is evidence to back it up. This is what the authorities have been. Rana Sanaullah also said that there is enough evidence to try everyone. So why aren't we trying them in civilian courts then? If there is enough evidence, then we should set an example. And does the government not trust the justice system right now, that we're going towards military courts? Or what is the idea behind it?
Things. Those who attacked civilian properties will be tried in civilian courts. And those who attack defense installations will be tried in military courts. There is a logic to it. But look at the record of judiciary in the recent years. I do not wish to say too much here, but since 2017, there is a visible one-sidedness to the judiciary's decisions. Just in contempt of court, if you can remember, that our senators were disqualified, jailed, and their senators and their elected representatives were just let go on uttering the same sentences. And the travesty, again another travesty, that was done to the Punjab government in summer of 2022. Let's not forget that. The 2 opposite Supreme Court decisions overturned an elected government. So there is a certain issue of our justice system being somehow also not being totally just. But yes, ultimately for those whose cases are being tried in civilian courts, we expect and trust the civilian judiciary to take real action. And if they feel that these cases are not gathered properly, they should throw them out. And may I remind you that in our last government, military courts were formed. And just like today, those who were tried in military courts had the option to take their cases to the High Court, which some of them did, and Peshawar High Court summarily threw out. So the court system is still there. That protection of the High Court and Supreme Court is still there. So those who say that these are summary trials, they're just not true. There are 3 appeals there in the military court. First appeal is to the Chief of Army Staff through that appeal system. And then the High Courts are still there, the Supreme Court is still there. So there is ample opportunity for justice. They have the opportunity to bring in their own lawyers if they wish. So that system also has a proper basis in what we call the justice system.
Thank you so much, Khurram Dastgir sir, for joining us.